Welcome to Family Business World. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell. I have Ryan Sanzari with me today, somebody I've known for a couple years, who is just an outstanding individual, but also a business leader. So Ryan, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dale. Thank you for having me.
And Ryan got promoted, I think just a few months ago, to be president of Alfred Sanzari Enterprises. So congratulations. And as always, I like to hear about background. So, so Ryan, where'd you grow up? I mean, you grew up around the business and so on, and where'd you go to school? And so let me hear your origin story.
Sure. So I was born in Hackensack, as was the majority of my family. I grew up in Saddle River. And if you're familiar with Saddle River, it's a very small town, so they send the students after fifth grade to Ramsey. So I kind of associate my like where I grew up and most of my memories with Ramsey, as odd as that may sound, as opposed to Saddle River, since I spent a lot more time there than I did even in my hometown. But so that's where I went to high school, and I went down to Villanova, outside of Philly, for college, and was there, and obviously 4 years, got my degree in political science, and then I went to work, but not what I'm doing today. But I don't know if we can get into that.
What did you do right after Villanova? What did you do right after Villanova?
So after Villanova, I actually, when I was a teenager, I wanted to study political science. I wanted to go into government and help legislate, be part of the legislative process, and it sounds cliche and a little corny, but just make this world a little better any way I can.
Absolutely.
I was very cognizant of the fact that I was born into a fortunate and very lucky situation at a very young age. I mean, my mother made that very clear to us, and she always made sure that we appreciate that fact and remind ourselves of that fact. So with that sort of manifested this kind of promise that I made to myself, in that, you've been handed this fortunate situation in that you didn't really do anything prior to you being born. So obviously you kind of showed up in this very lucky situation. So now, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to use this time on this earth to sort of just please yourself and buy a bunch of fancy things that don't really, mean anything? Or are you going to use this time to, help others that may not be as fortunate or born into a situation where, you're living in this nice home and you don't have to worry about where the next buck comes from or how the food is going to be put onto the table. So that's really where that passion and sort of desire to improve and do what I can to help make things a little better for others came from in my getting a degree in political science. So that's where that came from in so many words. And then after school, I went and I interned. I had a lot of internships. One for a congressman, Steve Rothman. I interned at two political fundraising firms, and I was on campaigns working for. When I say I was on campaigns, we were raising funds for campaigns for Andrew Cuomo, Bill Thompson, Cy Vance, and it was great. This was in Lower Manhattan, so I was commuting every day from Allendale to Lower Manhattan, which was a trek for me. I mean, at the time I was 22, and I think I was making a negative net income. But I did that for a year. I ended up back in Hackensack, where I would work for another political fundraising firm. And I got to the point where I just really wasn't happy. And I felt like I could be doing a lot more, and that I wasn't, just something inside me said, this isn't all you got. So maybe it's time to try something else. And ironically enough, the building that I was working in, this last, job working for the campaign, was is across from where our office is in Hackensack.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
Plaza. So every day I would see our building, and like as the days would go on, as the weeks and months would go by, and sort of like my level of happiness was kind of on the decline, I would look at the building, and there would be a little voice in me saying, "Yeah, are you in the right building? Should you be over there?" So finally, I said, I'm going to give this a shot. My whole life, I was sort of expected from, not by my family, but from people outside my family, that I was going to work in the family business. That was never really pressed on me by my father or my mother. They were always of the opinion that, you need to do what's best for you, what makes you happy, which I really, really appreciated and still do to this day. But so I went and I gave it a shot, and I was like, wow, I really, really like this. And the rest is history.
It's history, as they say. Well, first of all, Ryan, one of the reasons I've enjoyed, knowing you is that your humility is really, it's really wonderful. And it's genuine. You really are genuinely somebody that cares about other people, that's very, very self-conscious and very sensitive. And so this story, which I didn't know, was really explains that. When I got my MBA from Wharton, and afterwards I worked in Senator Lautenberg's office in Camden. And at one time I wanted to be a U.S. Senator, but Lautenberg was fantastic, but the closer you get to politics, the more you realize it's probably not something you want to do, because it's not what you think it is. It's not fighting for the little person and so on. It's about fundraising and backstabbing and all this stuff that you don't really see as much. So now, where did you start when you got into? Well, when you were younger, did you do anything with the family business? Did you sweep floors or anything like that when you were growing up?
Yes, it's a good question, Dale. I would spend a lot of summers, high school, college summers, just for some extra cash, working on the job sites. It was typically like me and a buddy. I'd go to one of my friends and say, "Hey, you want to make some money over the summer, and we'll work as laborers." We had no idea even what a laborer was at that point. And we were working on job sites for several years. Any chance I had where I wasn't in school, I was on the job sites, and definitely learning. I actually would never disclose my last name to the people who I was on the job site with. Yeah. So if I was working with the carpenters, I was Ryan, or I was Kid.
Right.
I don't even know if they knew my name, but
interesting.
It was great, because not only seeing how these sites are built, and whether it was a building or a tenant space, but it was also great in just developing these relationships that I did with these individuals on the job site. So it was really special for me, and really I can't say that that sort of was the catalyst that led to me working at the company. I think it would then come full circle, because when I started out at the company, this is now cutting ahead to after all of those jobs where I wasn't too happy. So once I started out at the company, I worked in the construction department. That's where my grandfather started. That's where my father started. So my father said, that's where I think you should start. So I started out in there. Now I'm in, the shirt and tie. But now I'm a APM, an assistant project manager. And I got thrown right into things,
into the lion's
on
den.
job sites, trying to talk to subcontractors and architects. I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned very quickly, and I really got hooked. I mean, I loved it. So all those years of being either mentored by my godfather, who was he worked for us for over 52 years. He passed away a few years ago, but he was like my grandfather's like right-hand guy in the field. He was not a shirt and tie guy. He was in the mud,
Right.
pouring concrete. He was that guy, but he built all of our buildings, and he would again, he was my godfather, so he would drive me around as a kid looking at everything. So with that, mixed with working as a laborer, by the time I started out in construction in the office, it's so funny. It just all came like full circle, right. And then just like built into almost like a tidal wave of like passion and interest, which, as you know, it really reflects in the way that you work. If you're happy and you're inspired and motivated, it's going to show in your productivity.
Well, see, and people don't seem to really understand that, but there's so much meat in what you just said. So one of the reasons I always ask about if somebody swept floors is because that may not make you love the company, but it really helps you respect the company. So Ryan, as I interview all these different companies, almost everybody, when they take over the business and they don't want to sell the business, they started out that way and they really respect the business. But then later on, as you said, you come into it and you really respect the operations and you see where you fit into the business. And so for the audience, I mean, Sanzari is a legendary name, and I know they're the cousin Sanzari and yours. What does the business do? Give the audience an insight into what are all the different projects that you guys are working on and gals are working on.
We're a commercial real estate developer, so we've built buildings that vary from hotels, multifamily or apartment buildings, and office, industrial, retail. So commercial kind of explains it, but there's also the residential and hospitality component. In addition to developing, we also manage our assets. Right. So after we build a project, we hold on to it pretty much for life, and we manage it, and we don't really we don't sell, at least not too often. There's been a couple instances where it makes sense to, and you trade an asset and for another one, or for whatever the reason. But you never say never. But for the most part, we really do not sell. We're long-term holders. So when a tenant moves into our building, if they're willing to make one of our offices or industrials or retail buildings their home to establish their business, then they can take comfort in knowing that the landlord that they signed their lease with day one is going to be the landlord, when their lease expires in 5 or 10 years.
That's powerful. That's really a powerful message. So we're about halfway through the show now. We're going to take a short commercial break and come back talking with Ryan Sanzari from the Alfred Sanzari Enterprises. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hop.
casinos by the ocean. Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches, solid rock, and everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey.
Welcome back to Family Business World. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, with Ryan Sanzari, president of Alfred Sanzari Enterprises. We were just talking about just the massive scope of the business of Sanzari Enterprises. And geographically, is this just Jersey? Are you doing New York? Where else are you working?
Yeah, we are, to date, we're just in New Jersey. Most of our properties are Bergen County.
Okay.
We do have a few outliers that are more central or west, but yeah, primarily Bergen County, northern New Jersey, not New York. To date, things can change, and who knows.
And so often I talk a lot about, working with you, with our Family Business Alliance and others. And so now there's a family member, there's another Sanzari. So talk about the differences between the two companies and the relationship between the two.
Yes. So there's Alfred Sanzari Enterprises, which is the company which I work for and my family owns. And then there is Joseph M. Sanzari Construction. So Joe Sanzari is my father's first cousin, my second cousin, and they are the trucks they're the Sanzari that you're more likely to see their name and their logo, because they're working on the major highways and building the bridges and doing a lot of state work and things like that. So they're a great company, very, very successful, as you can imagine. And we have a great relationship with them. Unfortunately, what we do and what they do, we don't get too many opportunities to work together.
Okay.
Because of, they do massive jobs, and it usually involves excavating or paving or something like that. So there have been a few opportunities that we've gotten to work with them, but it's pretty rare.
Well, and that's, the Sanzari name, as I said, in New Jersey is legendary. And so now your company was founded, what year was it officially founded?
1945.
1945, and this is just, again, a long-standing family business. So as you and assuming the role of president, it's just testament to you working and I don't know your dad, but just what we've talked about is just he's done a real good job of helping you progress at the right time. I think a lot of family businesses make the mistake and said, okay, well, they're going to inherit anyway. I might as well just make them president off the bat. And I don't think that that's necessarily the healthiest thing to do. You know the business now in ways that you wouldn't if you started out as president. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Dale, working for my father, there's reverse nepotism. So, and that was the way it was with my grandfather, with him as well, and my uncle, who owns the company as well. So the company is owned by founded by Alfred. Today it's owned by David and Ben Sanzari, who are his two sons. So yeah, the last 11 years have certainly not been easy, but anything worth pursuing, is not going to be typically. So like I mentioned before, although I didn't really finish the timeline. So I started out as an assistant project manager that's in construction. Then I moved on to operations. I was director of operations, chief operating officer, and then this year, which is my 11th year at the company, I was recently named president, which was an honor, as you can imagine.
Yeah, well, and let me just underscore that, because people don't, of course, I mean, you were 11 years, you worked your way up, and I love that term, reverse nepotism. And I see that in a lot of businesses where they basically say, earn it, as if I don't even know who you are. Earn it, and it's painful when you go through it, but when you achieve, you realize how much more you know. And so in this role, how has the pandemic been? How have you kind of weathered through the storm? I know some of it's been tough, but there have been opportunities too. How has this last year been for Sanzari?
It's been it's a great question, Dale. So similar to millions and millions of others. No one could have possibly prepared us for what this was going to be like. Between having our hotels, which were just basically shut down, to our office buildings, which we never stopped operating. So that's something that we take a lot of pride in, is that since the pandemic and well before that, we operate every single day, 24/7. Our buildings are operating and open. Now that when I say open, there's security and they get locked down and things like that. But the buildings, the mechanical systems, everything keeps going as if they are always going to be needed. We have essential tenants such as Univision, and they're broadcasting TV. They have TV broadcasts that are taking place, to BioReference, who life sciences and all the testing that they're doing. Wow. They're doing a lot of exciting things in the world. So it's our obligation, and it's something we take a lot of pride in, is keeping our buildings open, operating. So during the pandemic, it was, we were put to the test, and I feel very proud of our team. I mean, I feel like we can't help but take things for granted sometimes, and almost need these certain things to happen in life to make you appreciate what you have. And what we certainly have is just a fantastic team of employees who were just so dedicated and focused throughout the pandemic, and really willing to do whatever we needed to get through it. So, but getting back to your question, there were so many different facets to there are so many different facets to answering that question, but I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. Tenant relations, just communication with our tenants, seeing how they're doing, answering questions. I mean, there was so much uncertainty. No one knew, well, if we go back, what are we going to do? What are you guys going to do? Is it going to be safe? There were so many different questions that we didn't know the answers to, because we're looking to, the governing agencies to advise, us, the people on, and so many things, as everyone knows, we're so fluid. And that's really how I would sum it up, is that if the pandemic, the heart of it, showed us anything, it was that we are fluid. We really can adopt. We really can adapt to our surroundings and any given circumstance that presents itself. And that's something that showed itself during the pandemic, and something that we are certainly very proud of. So I would hope our tenants felt like they were, in good hands throughout the pandemic, and still are for many, many years to come.
Well, that's very, very well said. And challenge kind of separates the wheat from the chaff. Women from the girls, the men from the boys, et cetera, et cetera. And so clearly, you've coming out of this, you've got promoted and so on. So you really played a critical role. Going forward, with Sanzari, what are some of the things that you can share publicly with the audience about where you're going to take things. I mean, technology is so important with smart buildings and other things. And what do you see on the horizon?
Dale, going forward, and that's a question that I'm asked a lot, and you would think that after being asked that question so many times that I would have this really good answer. So I'm going to just give you the heads up right now that I don't have a really exciting answer, at least. But what I will say, and it's not that it's private or confidential information, it's nothing like that.
Right.
I want to, if you're asking me personally, I would like to just improve upon and build upon what was already built, with it, meaning the organization. After, this is our 76th year in operation.
Amazing.
After 76 years, I'm not really in a position to, completely change the game with respect to our organization. I want to reflect on what's been done, what's worked, what hasn't, remember and identify and never lose sight of the values in which this company was built upon, and just kind of take it from there. People say, do you want to grow? Do you want to grow? That's a word that I hear often. And it's really not the first thing that comes to mind. What comes to mind is really improving and really fine-tuning what we have today. Now, will that mean that we may be bigger, may own or develop more real estate in 10 years? I would certainly hope so.
Right.
But more importantly than anything, we don't need to be the biggest, but we do want to be the best.
Yeah.
And if that means that, we're third best, second best, whatever we are within, whatever is within our control, and we're capable of accomplishing would be my focus and my objective for the future.
Well, again, great answer. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I want to end with, I know you do some things. What are some of the biggest projects in a minute or so that Sanzari has done for the community? What kind of community? Because I know you're active in a number of different community things. What one or two things stand out now?
Dale, so we have the Alfred Sanzari Foundation, which is run by my two sisters and my cousin, Dana, Lisa, and Benita, and they have really taken it to another level. Wow. They've really put some structure and a lot of professional behind what is needed to run a foundation. I certainly didn't know what it takes to run a foundation. I always sort of had this naive, ignorant perspective of what a foundation means and what it was. But they've done some really incredible things from They did a project for Hackensack Hospital. We did a project for Hackensack Hospital, but they were the ones that spearheaded this with the foundation, where we built the Hepburn House, which is used to house families of critically ill children.
Oh, wow.
So that was something that was very special through the pandemic. There were substantial donations made to the Hackensack School District, so the kids could have, at least a little more of what they needed. I can't say that we solved all of the open items or resolved all of them, but we certainly made a dent. And yeah, I mean, those are the two biggest ones
those are some
that
biggies.
come to mind, but there's certainly a lot.
Ryan, those are some biggies, and I know they've done many more things. But unfortunately, we're out of time, and so Ryan, I want to thank you for being my guest. I've really enjoyed it. We've known each other for a couple of years, but I've learned a lot about you. It makes me respect you even more. And I just want to thank the audience for watching another interesting Family Business World show, and we will see you next week. Take care. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell. Have a great day.